In this video, I'm going to go over problems 6 and 7 from the SAT practice worksheet. So number 6, it says, what is the volume of the cotton candy machine in terms of pi? So we have this cotton candy machine here, and they're asking for us to find the volume of it. Now in this case, they're asking for it in terms of pi. So if you remember from the circle unit, when we're trying to get things in terms of pi, that is the exact. Remember, I would ask for the exact circumference or the exact area. That's when we just leave pi almost as a variable. We don't plug in 3.14, we just leave it as times pi. So let's go ahead and do that, and we're going to find the volume of this cotton candy machine. So if we look, this is what we call a composite figure. It's made up of two different 3D shapes. So let's go ahead. I'm going to, again, add in our SAT formula sheet. So if we take a look at our sheet here, we've got two shapes, and we need the volume formula for each of them. So on the top, we have a cone, and if we look at our SAT formula sheet, we've got 1/3 pi radius squared height. And on the bottom, I'll do it in a different color, we've got another cylinder. So we've got that the volume is going to be equal to pi radius squared height. So now let's go ahead and plug in the information. So for our cone, we have a radius of 2 and a height of 3. All right, so when you plug this in, you want to make sure that you multiply everything that is not the pi. That's how you get an exact answer or something in terms of pi. So we are going to do 1/3 times 2 squared times 3, which is going to give us 4. And then we slap that pi back on there. So the volume of the cone is going to be 4 pi. Then, for the volume of the cylinder, we go ahead and we look, well, we've got a radius of 2 and a height of 3. Our radius is 2 and our height is 3. So when we multiply that out, we get 12 pi. So you know that the top is 4 pi and the bottom is 12 pi. So to get the total volume, we need to add those up. Now remember, when you're doing things in terms of pi, you're kind of leaving it, you kind of treat it like pi as a variable. So just like if it was 4x plus 12x, you'd get 16x. We're going to do the same thing with pi. 4 pi plus 12 pi gives us 16 pi, which is going to be our answer. Next it says, which is closest to the volume of the cotton candy machine in cubic feet? So what you can actually do here is we already calculated the volume. We know it's 16 pi. Well, we could plug this into our calculator. 16 times pi, or you could do 3.14. And when you do that, you end up with 50.26. So your answer here is going to be D. 50. All right, awesome. So now we're going to go ahead and move on to number 7. So number 7 has a lot going on here, but we're going to work through it. So it says a glass sculpture in the shape of a right square prism is shown. So this is important. It's a square prism. The base of the sculptor's outer shape is a square of side length 2 inches. So what that means is that this guy here is a square. So if our length is 2, our width is going to also be 2. It says the sculpture has a hollow core that is also the shape of a right square prism. The glass in the sculpture is a 1/4 inch thick, and the height of both the glass and the hollow core is 5 inches. What is the volume in cubic inches of the glass in the sculpture? So what I would do here is I would find the volume of this entire square prism here, right? We have the dimensions for the entire thing. And then what we can do is subtract out that hollow center. And that would give us how much glass is actually used. So I want you to imagine that, right? If we find the volume of the entire thing with the center filled in, then we subtract out the center, we're going to be left with the glass. So let's go ahead. We're going to find the volume of the big prism, the entire prism. So the volume of the entire thing. And since this is a rectangular prism, we can go back to our formula sheet. We know that for a rectangular prism, we do length with height. So we're going to use that. Volume equals length with height. So for the volume of the entire thing, we're going to use a 5. I guess that's the height, actually, so we'll use that in a second. So our length and our width of the entire thing, remember, is 2. So we'll do 2 times 2, and then our height is 5. So when we plug that in, we get 20 inches cubed. So again, that is the volume of the entire thing with the center filled in. But now what we're going to do is we are going to subtract out that hollow center. So we need to figure out the dimensions of this guy. Well, we know that this is 1/4 of an inch all the way around, right? And if the entire thing is 2, and we've got that 1/4 of an inch coming out on both sides, that means that the length of this small hollow, or the smaller hollow prism, is going to be 2 minus 1/4 on this side, minus another 1/4 on this side, which ends up giving you 1.5. So what that tells us is that the length and width of this smaller prism is going to be 1.5 and 1.5. They also told us that the height is still 5. So let's go ahead and find the volume. Again, we're going to use length with height because it is a square pyramid or a square prism or a rectangular prism. And we plug them in. We get 1.5 times 1.5 times 5. And when you plug that in, you get that the volume is 11.25 inches cubed. So now, to find the volume of the glass, we just do 20 minus 11.25. And you should end up with 8.75, which is B. Now, one thing I want to point out, one thing the SAT always does is if it's a multi-step answer, most of the time they have the answers to the previous steps in there, right? We calculated 20. Well, 20 is an answer there. We calculated 11.25. Well, that's also an answer. But neither of those were the answer they were looking for. So just make sure you're very careful with that.